Greetings everyone, it is me Shadow Leon 659 once again, and this is a video that I've always wanted to do on this topic for a long arse time. You people know the old saying, all good things must come to an end, is how I describe storytelling in general. Yes, we may want stories to continue from where they ended in a sort of where are they now scenario, or we simply want to have an epic finale that brings closure to the stories we grew attached to. But in typical Hollywood fashion, such is not the case, as many studios will continue milking a franchise until it's bone dry. This is this video is gonna be unique from most of my other videos, as it will not be a ranking, nor will it be a countdown. However, it is more of a discussion and a breakdown. Anyway, without further ado, I present to you where film franchises should have ended. There is a good reason why the Rambo franchise ends with Part 4. Ever since the franchise began, we have all rooted for John Rambo to live a peaceful life away from all forms of conflict. But in the film, he is just a man looking for a place to stay in the town of Hope, Washington, where crooked police began harassing him, and he is pushed past his limit, eventually declaring war on the police and bringing the war home. You may say that the later sequels were a betrayal of what the first film stood for, which I call bullshit on. As in part 2, he was sent on a mission to rescue some POWs who were left to suffer, and the selfish / traitorous Murdoch betrays Rambo just to save his own fucking life. While Rambo succeeds in the mission, he leaves the outpost to live in Thailand. And in part 3, when Trauman and the US military try to send him on a mission to Afghanistan to help the Mujahideen fight against the Russian invaders, Rambo declines the offer, saying he wants nothing to do with the war. It is only when Trauman is kidnapped by the ruthless Russian Colonel Zayson does he intervene. This finally brings us to Rambo 4, where John Rambo is once again brought into war and conflict in Burma after a group of mercenaries are kidnapped by the Burmese military under the ruthless Pa Thi Ting. So he finally springs into action. The Burmese military are defeated, Major Tin is killed, the missionaries are saved, and Rambo makes his way back home to the United States to visit his father Rivas at his home in Boy, Arizona, where he is finally at peace, the thing he so longed for. However, Rambo 5 says, fuck the ending of Rambo 4, we can do whatever we want. His home gets destroyed by the cartel, his honorary niece is murdered, and he is treated as an outcast yet again. Happy ending? No wonder everyone agrees with Part 4 being the ending. Regardless of how you feel about the Lost World Jurassic Park, the sequel has a lot of deep themes and meanings that expand on the first film's lore. I personally think that adding Isla Sorna to the franchise allows the writers to explore a new location, giving us the feeling of a Jurassic safari instead of another Jurassic Park. The whole purpose of this sequel was learning from our mistakes and how we can fix them, as well as our preservation of the environment. You thought the dinos on Nublar were dangerous? The Sorna dinosaurs are even more dangerous. Not even the herbivores are friendly, which goes to show you how the Injun team, led by Peter Ludlow, were gonna put people's lives at risk. The San Diego incident, which Roland and Nick were indirectly responsible for, with Buck going on a rampage, should be another indication that the dinos are wild and dangerous animals that we cannot control. Sarah and Malcolm managed to successfully put an end to the carnage by bringing Buck and Junior back to the ship. Unfortunately, Ludlow loses his life when greed clogs his mind. With Buck and Junior returned to Sorna, John Hammond has finally learned his lesson. The world realized that the dinos were wild and dangerous animals that could not be controlled. International militaries put a blockade around Isla Sorna. Malcolm had his reputation saved and proved himself to be a caring father, and the dinosaurs could finally live in peace without humanity's intervention. As John Hammond said, we must work with the Costa Rican Department of Biological Preserves to establish a set of rules for the preservation and isolation of that island. These creatures require our absence to survive, not our help. And if we could step aside and trust in nature, life will find a way. So you'd think that no one would dare try to do another attempt. But no, they disregarded Hammond's wise words. I won't dive too deep into part 3 as it doesn't really add much to the story while I do enjoy that film. The first Jurassic World film goes back to the idea of opening a theme park, and what do you know? It goes wrong because the characters are incompetent scatterbrains who couldn't put two and two together. Fallen Kingdom tries the whole thing of bringing the dinos back to mainland and completely forgetting that the San Diego incident happened, which should have been a huge red flag. Don't even get me started on the retarded as hell subplots involving hybrids, human cloning, and using fucking dinos in warfare. Dominion was a film with no identity and no idea of what the fuck it wanted to be. They bring back old legacy characters and do nothing with them. Lewis Dodgson is now a freaking time crisis villain who wants to rule the world with genetically engineered locusts, and the dinos are an afterthought. Rebirth was another been there, done that story you've seen a million times already. Universal, just stop milking this franchise for the love of God. You've killed it enough. For as far as we're concerned, the entire Kung Fu Panda trilogy was all about Po not only becoming the new Dragon Warrior, but also overcoming plenty of obstacles to prove himself worthy. Part 1 is where he learns to become a fighter. Part 2 is where he learns to overcome his PTSD and stop the evil Lord Shen. Part 3 is where he finally learns to become a Kung Fu master and live up to his title of the Dragon Warrior, not to mention reuniting with his long-lost father Li Shang. Hell, I'd even argue that the animated series Legends of Awesomeness, Po has to learn responsibility. But Part 4 undoes all of his character development from the previous 3 movies, fights a villain who has one of the most laughable excuses for becoming a baddie in the history of fiction. All the villains represented a challenge Po had to overcome. Tai Lung physical, Lord Shen mentality, and Kai spirituality. He gives his title to this selfish and unlikable thief by the name of Zen, played by Aqua fucking Fina. Why? Just why? Not to mention the Furious 5 are glorified cameos. We got the director of that worthless excuse for a kids movie known as Trolls. Why the hell did DreamWorks think that making this film was such a good idea? But thankfully, we never got Mike Mitchell's original idea of making it live action. Seriously, who the hell asked for a sequel to ID4? One of the best films of the 90s, and easily one of my favorite films of all time, especially when you consider that the aliens' mothership was destroyed, the city destroyers crash landed, and were burning into flames. The entire world was celebrating a victory against the invaders. Whitmore proved himself to be a great leader. Livingston got back with his ex-wife, and Steve Hiller and Jasmine got engaged. Not to mention, Steve and Livingston saved the world from total Armageddon. However, the sequel comes along, kills off Steve Hiller in an insulting fashion off-screen. Whitmore gets a meaningless sacrifice. Livingston is now a character who spills exposition and nothing else. Robert Loggia's General Grey was relegated to a blink and you'll miss it cameo. The new characters are unlikable and immature jackasses. The stakes don't even feel as high. It rehashes so damn much of the original that it might as well have just been a remake. And the final battle involving a bus chase clearly rips off Godzilla 1998's Taxi Chase. Independence Day isn't Star Wars, and after all these years, this was the best you could come up with, Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin. Ugh. I love to declare this film the true finale of the Die Hard franchise, and for good reason, as the whole of America was under attack by a ruthless cyber terrorist by the name of Thomas Gabriel, who later kidnaps John McClane's daughter. John must now team up with Justin Long's character Matt Farrell in order to stop him and rescue Lucy. I can obviously tell that Justin Long's Matt Farrell is one or two rewrites away from being Jack McClane, considering how Long and Bruce Willis have this father-son relationship and chemistry with each other. All you have to do is take out every moment of him wanting to date Lucy and you have your Jack McClane right there. So the day is saved and John has this family reunion and he can now live a happy life. Part 5 ruins all of John's development by turning him into an unlikable twat with zero redeeming qualities. Jai Courtney was woefully whiny and irritating as fuck. The Russian setting was out of place and anything resembling a Die Hard film was tossed in the rubbish. Plus, the film has one of the worst excuses for father-son relationships I have ever seen in my entire life. Do yourself a favor and just stick to the first 4 films.